little jingle. Hi everyone, welcome to this new edition of PHP Sussex. My name is Yannick, and if this is your first time at PHP Sussex, we are a Brighton-based user group dedicated to the PHP programming language and to web development in general. We gather roughly once every other month, usually on the second Wednesday of the month. We've got two talks for you tonight. The first one is going to be given by Darren Arbon, who is with us here. And it's going to be about transferable skills. And he is going to be followed by Christopher Miller for a talk about Burnout. And Chris is going to join us online. Before we do any of that, though, first a reminder that this event is recorded. So if you do not want to be filmed or photographed, please do let us know. And then we've got some quick PHP Sussex news as well. Joby Harding, who is right there. Hello, Joby. Joby, many of you will already know as a regular PHP Sussex attendee and also speaker. Joby is going to help me with the organization of PHP Sussex moving forward. So yeah, welcome to the team, Joby. And then before we get started with the talks, Cameron is going to tell us a few words about Silicon Brighton, Runway East, and Tilo, who all kindly support this meetup tonight. Over to you, Cameron.
Thank you very much, Yannick. Hello, everyone. My name is Cameron, as Yannick has alluded to or outright said. And I'm from Silicon Brighton. We're a tech community, made up of lots of different tech communities in Brighton and Hove. Just like PHP, there are lots of other meetups that we support, and we love all of them equally, which is why we're putting on this conference, which is Evolve, which has been plastered all around the room. It's going to be a fantastic day. We're looking for attendees, sponsorships, and also like the opportunities to exhibit as well. So if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in, please speak to me or Grace at the end. We've already got loads of really cool exhibitors in with us, so we're really looking forward to it. And 4th of July at the Dome, it's going to be a brilliant day. Here's some of those meetups that we support as well. Not just PHP, as I said, but a vast variety of different meetups, all as passionate as this one. We want to say a huge thank you to our supporters as well, who support everything that we do. They help us out with the live streaming costs as well. Also, Runway East is one of our supporters as well, who's given us the venue for free this evening, which is wonderful. And we want to shout out our sponsors as well in James Chase and Plus Accounting, that just continuously fund what we do and guide us and look after us. You can stay up to date on all of the Silicon Brighton activity via this link tree here. We've got our own Slack channel as well, which is brilliant for discussing like your own opportunities, questions that you may have missed in the Q&As, and get some answers. Yeah, just excellent community fun. So we are, and moving on to our sponsor for this evening specifically is Tilo. Tilo are also Silicon Brighton sponsors too. They're a fantastic company, which one member in our audience can definitely attest to. They are industry leaders in digital gift carding. They're very seamless in all that they do, and they are currently looking for these job roles, and they have to fill them. They're a brilliant community as well. They come to our talks, they fund what we do as well. They truly are a community-based company in Brighton. If you're looking for your next role in any of these areas, definitely check them out and scan that QR code. So back to Yannick, I believe, as that's not my bit.
Thank you, Cameron. All right, so for the first talk tonight, we've got Darren Arbon for a talk about transferable skills, which I think is particularly relevant a topic at the moment, you know, with the rise of AI and whatnot. And Darren is a senior software engineer at Technology from Sage. I knew I was going to get it wrong. And before that, he was a secondary school science teacher. And before that, he was a postdoctorate researcher at the University of Sussex. So yeah, Darren knows a thing or two about transferable skills. And that's it for the intro, actually. So yeah, without any further ado, please welcome Darren for his talk, Range, the Power of Transferable Skills.
Thanks very much. You've taken one of my slides away from me by giving my bio. What are transferable skills or superpowers? What are my superpowers? What can set me above a technically similar individual in an interview? how can I use my superpowers in my current role? And how can I maximize the performance of my team? Now, if these are questions you've asked yourself, then hopefully I can provide you some answers. If you haven't asked them, then hopefully you'll still get something from this talk. So this is me. I have a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD in cancer genetics. This is a photo of me when I passed my PhD graduation. You get to wear a lovely gown, and I thought I'd go in and do a bit of research at the same time. I then moved, I did some postdoc in Birmingham, and then came down to Sussex and was a researcher for Cancer Research UK. Did that for 4 years and then decided for career change number 1 to career number 2, which was a secondary science teacher. So I taught all sciences to GCSE, and then I did A-level biology and physics as well. And then I decided to do another career change in 2018 to become a software engineer. And recently, well, I say recently, it's 2023, I got promoted to a senior software developer. So why am I talking to you about transferable skills? Well, I believe that transferable skills have allowed me, A, to make those switches between very different careers. Yes, the first two have got science involved, but knowing how to be a scientist is nothing like how to be a science teacher. And none of them are like anything to do with coding. But also, I think that they've helped me to progress in those careers. So as a science teacher, I was promoted to assistant head of science within 4 years. And typically that can take around 8 to 10 years in the profession, which I attribute to the use of some of my transferable skills in that role to sort of elevate myself. I don't know the details about how quick it takes to get from a junior to a senior developer. I was not able to find that information out on the internet, but I did it in 4 years. You'll think there's 5 years there, but one of those years I was furloughed because of COVID. But I think that they have helped me to make those transitions between the careers and to like grow within those careers. The talk is titled Range, the Power of Transferable Skills. So what am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about initially traditional routes and alternative pathways into careers. Then I'm going to talk about what are transferable skills or superpowers. Now, I call them superpowers because I actually do think they are super. I think they can really empower you as a person to develop and to progress really, really well. People often refer to these as soft skills. I hate that term, soft skills. You're like, oh, it's soft and all fluffy, and as though there's no importance to them at all. And I actually think they're really important. So whenever people refer to them as soft skills, just a little bit inside me dies. And I'm going to talk to you about how you can discover what your superpowers are, how you can embrace those when job hunting, or if you're not job hunting, how you can embrace them in your current role, or how you harness your team's superpowers to boost your team. I said I'd talk about initially traditional versus alternative pathways. And this is because I didn't do the traditional path of computer science, GCSE, computer science, A-levels, computer science degree, and then a job in computer science. Most of them, my team have gone through that route. I didn't. I did an alternative pathway where I did science, teaching, and then tech. And I'll loop back to this at the end to explain how that is also quite important. I've managed to do this because of my transferable skills and by getting this thing called range of transferable skills. And I read a book which kind of started me thinking down this route a few years ago, recommended by a friend who was very similar to me. He'd done lots of different careers and built a range of transferable skills. And he's now doing project management. He's got his own business in project management called Range Consulting. So me and him chat a lot about this term range. The book is brilliant. It talks about the comparisons between people that have gone through that traditional route and people that have gone through this more varied route. And we've got Tiger Woods, right? He was learning to, well, his dad gave him a golf club around the age of 2. And so while all his like friends were playing with Transformers at home, he was tapping little golf balls around, apparently, rumor has it. He entered his first competition at the age of 6 and was solely focused on doing golf. Golf was his thing, right? He did well because he was arguably the best golfer the world has ever seen. Yes, things went a little bit wrong in the past few years, but that doesn't take away from where he was. He was the best golfer. But then contrast that to Roger Federer, okay? He did play tennis as a youngster, but he also played other sports, skiing, swimming, badminton, basketball, football. And he actually credits his hand-eye coordination, not to just playing tennis, but to all the other sports when he was younger. He had a range of different sporting experiences, which enabled him to get to the same level. He was the best tennis player of his time. There is a constant debate at the moment of who is the greatest of all-time tennis player. For me, it's Roger. For other people, it might be Djokovic or Nadal. But both going different routes, but both the top of their careers. And the book gives more examples of people that have used this idea of range to get to a similar sort of level. So, transferable skills and non-transferable skills, what are they? Transferable skills are those skills that you can transfer from between jobs, industries, or even different areas of your life. And typically, they're refined through real life practice. Non-transferable skills are those that are applicable within one sort of job or industry and are more narrowly focused. Let me give you an example just to make it fundamentally clear. We've got a developer, let's call him Gary, right? Gary is a React developer. He loves React. He's so good at it. He knows the difference between things like use state, use memo, and use callback off the top of his head. He's brilliant. He's also a great communicator. His team love for him to give all of their product briefs, their company updates, but he's getting bored of React and he wants a different job. So he's going to go and become a chef. Now, in that role, his communication will be really powerful because he'll be able to talk to his team, his sous chefs, the waiters and waitresses to get all of the food out. So that transferable skill is going to be really powerful for him. But his knowledge of React is not going to help him at all. But he's doing that kitchen work, he's a chef, and he's learned how to make the best omelette. Again, that's a narrow skill, that's a non-transferable skill. He decides to go back into computing, and that's not going to help him at all. So there's a big difference between these skills. The transferable skills can cross multiple job domains, but those non-transferable skills can't. Now, should point out that it's really important to think not that transferable skills are the be-all and end-all. You still need those non-transferable skills. You can't be a developer without knowing how to develop code. But you can enhance your experience by embracing your transferable skills. So I'm going to introduce a few of these transferable skills that you may or may not have realized are transferable skills. And whilst I'm talking, I want you to think maybe, do these skills apply to you? Have you used them currently? Have you used them in the past? Are these skills that you could potentially embrace? So we'll start with problem solving. So what is this? It's about identifying a challenge or analyzing potential causes or solutions with the action and then taking action to resolve it. What does that look like in tech? Well, that's debugging, isn't it? You've got a problem, you need to solve it. How are you going to do that? By debugging that solution. You could have just released the new version of your app to the wild, and the performance has taken a massive hit. You've got to work out how to fix that, and so that the app is no longer eating all of the data of your clients' computers. You then also might want to design scalable solutions. These are all things that you're going to use problem solving for in tech. They typically use things like looking at logs or metrics or looking at tests to determine the root cause of the problem. And so there is sometimes a crossover with these transferable skills because we're talking about problem solving, but you've potentially got data analysis in there as well, looking at the data of those metrics. You could also collaborate with team members to explore different solutions. So you've got some intercommunication there with teamwork as a transferable skill. We've got communication. So what is this? This is about clearly conveying information and ideas. Now, people often think communication is just through speaking, but it's not. It is through verbal communication, but it's also through written communication, through active listening, so being a like member of a conversation, not just being there, being present and listening to what is being said, and also about non-verbal cues, things like tone, body language, and facial expression. I mentor a boot camper at the moment, and he had an interview, I think it was on Monday, and I said to him afterwards, like, how did it go? And he said, oh, it was really good. I knew the answers to all the questions. I gave really good answers. And I said, so did you remember to smile? Because he always, whenever he gets nervous in these situations, his face just goes dead and he looks very bored. And he's not. He's a really vibrant guy. And I wanted them to see that in the interview. He said, yeah, I did, but it was really hard because everybody else just looked bored. And so those facial expressions of those other people in that room made him not feel so great. And so there is a lot of power with your facial expressions. What does communication look like in tech? Well, that's writing clear documentation. I will go on about this quite a bit through this talk. I've just moved projects, teams, and stacks And so I'm having to work through this whole new set of documentation. Some of it's great, some of it needs fine-tuning, but there's a skill, isn't there, in writing clear documentation. You could be explaining concepts to non-technical people, so explaining what your product is doing or what your code is doing to your product team. It's about code reviews. We had a change in the way that we did code reviews a few years ago because we were worried that all of the comments on PRs were kind of quite negative, because it's always like, oh, you could do this better, or have you tried this? And we wanted to try and make it a bit more positive so that people felt a little bit happier, which was quite nice. You could also lead stand-ups or demos or sprint retros. Time management. So what's this? It's about planning, prioritizing, using your time effectively and efficiently, setting goals and deadlines, and avoiding distractions and procrastinations. The whole point of good time management is that you work smarter and not harder. For me, this is my worst. I have rubbish organizational skills, so that means my planning is not great. And I am so easily distracted, and I love procrastination. So for me, it's great that I know this is my weakness. The thing with your superpowers is not necessarily embracing the ones that you're good at. That's you do have to do that, but it's about knowing what you need to work on. So I know this is a problem, so I try to do things to avoid those things. It is hard. What does that look like in tech? Well, it's about breaking down your work into manageable tasks during sprint planning. It's about estimating your story points. It's about balancing that deep focus coding with meetings. Like, you've just picked up a big piece of work and you've spent like 10, 15 minutes getting into it. You understand what you need to do to address your ticket, and then that little meeting box pops up saying you've got a meeting, it's the company meeting for 2 hours. So you've got to work out how to do that, when to do that deep focus and not to be interrupted by those meetings. Stress management. So recognizing signs of stress and stress triggers, taking steps to stay calm, focused, and resilient. So that could be things like mindfulness, breaks, exercise, playing Gran Turismo 7 on your PlayStation if your wife lets you, and handling that in a healthy, constructive way. Our next talk, talking about burnout, is probably going to talk about this a lot more. What does that look like in tech? Well, that's things like outages, on-call alerts. Your app's gone down, people need it, you've got to get that back up and running. There's a lot of stress in those environments. I've been in those calls where people are getting really stressed trying to get your thing back up and running. Thankfully, I'm not on our 24/7 team, because that happens at 3 o'clock in the morning, where I can imagine the stress is even more. You've got a big release coming up. My first tech job, we had a whole UI overhaul of our app, and there's loads of new features coming into it. Marketing had been advertising this, and we had this date when it was going to go live, and our QA team just kept finding bugs, and everybody was just getting worried that we weren't going to hit those deadlines. I'm quite good with stress management because of being a teacher before, which is quite stressful. And so I was able to calm the team down. One of my methods, which I'll talk about in a little bit, is jokes. I use jokes quite a lot. Cheese jokes are my favorite. I might tell you some later. You could be stressed about navigating a new complex code base. As I said, I've just picked up a code base. It's massive. It's stressful trying to navigate it. And also, it's knowing when to take those breaks. It is important to take breaks, but it's also knowing when you need to take them and take them at the right times. Multitasking should be quite obvious. Multitasking, handling more than one task at a time, switching between those tasks efficiently, and juggling tasks. It could be about keeping track of multiple threads of work, picking up multiple tickets. For me, this is one of my strengths. A couple of weeks ago, before I moved projects, I could have multiple tickets on the go, be reviewing multiple PRs, helping people in my team, and still playing Gran Turismo 7 on the PlayStation, and manage that all perfectly fine. But one of the key things about being a multitasker is knowing when not to multitask. So in moving to this new project, I'm not doing that, because I know that that's going to be detrimental to my learning, because I will not be able to manage multiple new repos and code bases and all of that in my head at the same time. So it's a key skill of being a multitasker, about when to not multitask. What does that look like in tech? It could be about writing code whilst monitoring your Slack or Teams or whatever you use, whilst reviewing pull requests and then answering questions from your team. If you're a full stack developer, it could be between switching your front end and your back end, or your database. It could be handling multiple tickets at a time. It could be all of those together, alongside balancing support requests, support tickets that have come in, or managing deployments. So I think a lot of us do multitasking quite a lot in this role anyway. And our final one that I'm going to go into detail on is adaptability. So this is about adjusting to new conditions. It's about learning those things quickly and staying effectively when things change. You've got to embrace those changes, be open to new ideas and feedback, and then learning those things quickly so that you can get up to speed a lot quicker. And you've got to stay calm and positive in those situations. I think this lends itself to that stress management a lot, because when you get told you've got to change, there's a lot of stress involved in that. And what does that look like in tech? Well, that's being switched to a new framework or new stack. Project requirements change. So you're in a startup and you're working on a 6-month project. You're 3 months in and the board have a meeting and decide, nah, you're not going to be doing that anymore. You're switching to something new. That requires adaptability so that you can quickly move as fast as you can and get up to speed as fast as you can. And switching teams and roles. And like I say, I've just done this a week into the new project, and the stress levels are high. I'm telling myself lots of those cheese jokes. And the transferable skills list does go on. There are loads of other things. Leadership. Now, you can be a leader, or you can exhibit leadership without being a leader. Obviously, as a leader, you probably need to be good at leadership. But you can do that in other ways. You can help junior members in your team. You can lead small teams of work. There are plenty of opportunities to show leadership. Teamwork, I think times have changed. I remember when I first dabbled in tech 20 odd years ago, it's very different to what it is now, where it's more about the team. And my teams have always been fantastic, not just in tech, but in teaching and in my science teams as well. And when you've got a good team, the output is fantastic. Writing, so that's documentation, project breakdowns, listening, creativity, the list goes on, and there's way more transferable skills than this. Google them, ChatGPT, whatever you want to use to find out what that list is. So we've talked about some of those transferable skills or superpowers, but how do you know what your superpowers are? Because you might not. I didn't until I started looking into it. I didn't know what I was good at. You kind of take it for granted that you're good at stuff, but you don't know what it is. And then how do you use that? So if you have no clue what your superpowers are, what you could do, I did this as a career service little quiz that tell me what my strengths were. It's quite easy. It takes less than 5 minutes. There's a handful of questions, and it gives you these 3 skills that I'm apparently good at. So I'm a helper. I enjoy helping and listening to other people. Well, that means I'm probably got good either coaching or mentoring transferable skills, and a good listener. An analyst. I like dealing with complicated problems. So there's a problem solver, and working with numbers. So a data analyst. And I'm a doer. I couldn't attribute any transferable skills to a doer. There might be. I tried to think for it, but I couldn't. But the idea with this is it gets me thinking, what am I good at? And what sort of transferable skills can I then label myself with? So I did this first. And then I did another strengths profile. It's a much bigger one. There's 120 questions. So it does take a bit of time. And this is free. There's paid versions, which give you a better list of strengths and weaknesses. And so here, we've got humor. I love making people laugh and look for every opportunity to do so. So that's part of my stress management. I can lighten the mood quite easily within our team. I do jokes, but also our stand-ups, I do quizzes just to relax people in more. I'm fully remote, so we don't see our team except for stand-up. And we do quizzes, we do fun activities, just to get everyone engaged for that day of work. Adventure. So I relish the risk of the untried and look forward to experiences outside of your comfort zone. So that's the adaptability. I wish I hadn't told my CTO that, and so he wouldn't have moved me, but hey. Action. So action was that you may sometimes feel the need to act immediately and decisively. It's a problem solver, I thought, with this. And then at the bottom is my weakness. So this will give you 3 realized strengths, 3 unrealized strengths, a couple of learned behaviors, and your weakness. And so for me, it was not obvious. It was not a surprise. It was time optimizer. I'm not very good at time management. So that wasn't too much of a surprise. But then this starts to make me think, these are the things that I'm good at. So I'm starting to get an idea of the transferable skills, the superpowers that I have. Then what do? We could make a list and check it twice if you want. So I would list the careers that I've had and then think, well, what transferable skills have I got in that career? So let's say, for example, as a teacher, well, project management, a class is a project, and I had 15 classes a year. So that's a lot of project management. Stress management, oh, you've got, you arrive at school. I was a science teacher. I arrive at school and the technicians say, yeah, that science experiment you wanted to do, we haven't got the kit in. You're gonna have to do something else. I've got 10 minutes to plan a lesson. That's quite stressful. You've arrived in your class and a kid walks in and they've had a really bad day at home and they're just walking in and throw the bag down and they've got attitude and you've got to stay calm. So there's a lot of stress management in teaching. Time management, I've said I'm rubbish at it, but for teaching, you're kind of stuck with that timing of you've got 5 1-hour lessons. You've got to stick with your timings. Good listening, good resilience, good prioritization. So think about what the careers that you've been in and what those transferable skills are that you've had. Now, for me, I came from outside of tech. So I have other careers that I could pull on, as I've showed here. What do those transferable skills look like elsewhere? Because you might have careers outside of tech. You might be recruiting and have people applying for positions outside of tech. So what does it look like elsewhere? So problem solving. So in healthcare, you've got to diagnose a patient's symptoms and decide on a treatment plan. Teaching, finding ways to engage a struggling student. Retail, handling a customer complaint with a creative solution. Or construction, we might need to adjust plans because materials are delayed or conditions change. Communication, well, in law, you've got to argue a case persuasively in court. In marketing, you've got to make a campaign pitch that resonates with your target audience. In healthcare, you've got to explain a diagnosis and treatment plan to a patient. Customer service, you've got to listen to concerns and resolve them with care. And I haven't added it on here, but there's bar work, right? People often think that the careers that aren't sort of classed as your professional careers, that don't have a degree behind them, don't offer transferable skills, but they do. Communication in bar work. I've worked in bars, and you've got to have good communication with with the people that you're serving. When I did it, the last time I did it, when I was finishing my PhD to pay for my last few months of doing the PhD, I was doing bar work, and I got loads of tips because I was a good communicator. Time management. So in journalism, you've got to meet tight publishing deadlines. In education, you've got to plan lessons. You've got to deliver lessons within strict timings. In hospitality, you've got to coordinate bookings, staff shifts, and service during peak hours. Freelancing, balancing multiple clients and projects without missing deadlines. And project management, you're creating schedules, tracking projects. Stress management, healthcare, wow. I thought teaching was quite stressful, but imagine being a frontline A&E worker. One of the people that works, she was in my team before, she's not in my team anymore, but she was a mental health nurse. And she'd come from that background. Her stress management skills were out of this world because that's what we've got to deal with on a daily basis. I've already talked about teaching. You've got retail, coping with long shifts, queues or stock shortages, customer services, handling an angry customer that's got a massive complaint, but you've got to stay calm. And I would also add in here bar work, right? Imagine it. Friday night, you've got bar 5 deep of people. They're all wanting their drinks now. You've got to deal with that. I once, when I was working at a bar when I was 19, a guy who was in his late 20s decided to come for he wanted a job in bar work. He was in finance, and it was getting too stressful for him. He was about to have a mental breakdown. He wanted an easy job. These were his words. I want an easy job. So he lasted 2 days. It was just, yeah, it's not, and there's a lot of stress in bar work. And so in my early careers, I don't do it anymore because I've got a lot of careers behind me. But when I was in my early stages, I would list bar work because of the skills that it gave me. And I would always advise people to even don't disregard those jobs because they're not classed as professional. If they offer the skills, include them. Multitasking, so nurses, they're monitoring patients, administering meds. They've got 20, 30 patients that they're doing this for all at the same time. Event planning, you're coordinating with vendors, managing timelines, solving problems on the fly. Office admin, you're answering phones, booking meetings and handling emails, all with the same pair of hands. And parenting, you're juggling school runs, meals and work responsibilities. So there's a lot of ways that I've still got adaptability. So what does that look like elsewhere for teaching? As I said, changing your lesson plans last minute, hospitality, switching roles or unexpected guest requirements, and logistics, rerouting deliveries because of weather or because of road conditions. So there's a lot of ways that you can get these transferable skills. But, right, so you know what your transferable skills are, right? How are you going to use them? Let's say you're looking for a job. What are you going to do to embrace those transferable skills? The first thing, and I didn't do this until recently, well, I haven't done it at all, but I would do it moving forwards, is to list my personal skills. You list your technical skills, but you don't list your personal skills. I've been chatting to a recruiter on behalf of my School of Code mentee person because he was struggling to get through the door. He was struggling to get his CV even like seen by people. And they're saying because there's not so many jobs at the moment and lots of people are applying for jobs, they're running them all through computer systems to weed out the ones that don't match the job descriptions. They're not just looking for skills, technical skills anymore. They're looking for your personal skills, your superpowers. So you want to put those sorts of things on your CV. Just list them. Is that enough? No, because anyone can write these things. I can write, I'm a leader, I'm a communicator. Doesn't really mean anything. What I would do is then add some experience. So talk about the things that you did. So for example, when I was doing my PhD, I was managing 2 independent projects, investigating the role of proteins in the repair of damaged DNA. So that's project management. And so give examples of the work that you have done in those roles to underpin those transferable skills. You've also still got to list all of the technical things that you have, but make sure you talk about those transferable skills, those superpowers. And for me, because I had a background that wasn't IT, I had to heavily rely on these. My first CV to get into tech had nothing to do with tech in it because I hadn't really done anything. It was all emphasizing those transferable skills. So you're not looking for a job. You're happy where you are, but how are you going to harness those superpowers within your current role? What are you going to do to bolster your position, to potentially move up in the company, or just to make yourself more useful? So what could you do for each of these superpowers I've talked about in your current role? So you could improve some team processes. You could find out that there's inefficiencies on how stand-up is run or how knowledge is shared and suggest some ideas to improve those processes. I hate the word onboarding, and my wife finds it hilarious that I'm having to use it, but I couldn't think of any other word. But onboarding journeys, some companies have it, it's brilliant, and some companies don't. You might decide that there's actually a better way to do it because you're a problem solver. You've got some ideas on how to do it. So volunteer to be the next onboarder for that person. Communication. You could deliver updates at meetings. I'm not going to say go straight in and say, right, I want to talk at the whole company meeting to everybody because that's quite scary. You could just start talking in front of your team and then demonstrating like showing demos to product, things like that. Start small and move up. You could also deliver talks like this if communication is your thing. Stress management. A lot of stress management is about coping with your own stress management, but I would say you could go one step further and be that buffer for other people. Like I said, what I do is I use jokes and fun times to sort of mediate other people's stress, to be that stress buffer for others. Use humor and positivity to help the team stay grounded and to notice when other people are getting stressed and offer your help. Multitasking, so you could be a connector. This is where you kind of keep your fingers in lots of pies, attract multiple conversations across your company, get all of that information in and surface it at the right time. I work remotely now, so all of my sort of keeping track of multiple conversations is all in Teams. But when I was in the office, I was probably the only developer that didn't have earphones on, and I was listening to every conversation because I wanted to know what marketing were doing, what sales were doing. And it meant that I could offer inputs into other conversations because I was aware of not just what my team was doing. You could build whilst learning. So you've been tasked with adding a new feature that involves adding a new library. Typically, you could just add that library, add that feature, ship it. Or you can spend a bit of time learning what that library does because there might be a case that you're going to have to use it again in the future. Adaptability, do something out of your comfort zone. and learn to deal with the stress that that gives you. Like I said with the communication, don't go from, if you think that communication is your thing that you struggle with, don't go for something massive straight away, because that's just going to put you off. You're going to be like, I don't like this, I'm never doing it again. Start small and build up. Learn some new skills. I'm constantly learning new skills. I threatened my wife that I wanted to do an MBA. Not for any reason, just fancied doing it. And she was like, 4 degrees is enough. I was like, okay, fine. But I am tempted to do a history GCSE at some point. But I love learning new skills. It's one of my things that I just love doing. So yeah, embrace these things. I'm just going to give you an example of some of the things that I've done, where you can see how those transferable skills sort of link to what the things I've done. So I volunteered to give tech talks within my team. I've given company talks. I've done departmental updates. So that's using my communication and presentation skills. I do that. Well, I used to be a teacher, and the bit that I miss, well, one of the things I miss from teaching is presenting, is talking to people. So I try to do it as much as I can in the company. I think I'm one of only 2 of the tech team that actually likes doing it. I've led an AWS study group, so lots of us wanted to take some AWS course, an AWS course. So I put together a group of us, and we worked together to take that course. So that's demonstrating leadership, teamwork, and problem solving. I've mentored junior and bootcamp developers. That's mentoring and listening. So when I moved 15 months ago, I moved from a JavaScript stack to PHP. And with that came a lot of stuff that I didn't know, and a lot of rules that we'd written. And I was constantly being picked up on my PRs because you're not following the rules. I was like, what do these rules mean? And everyone was like, I don't really know. So I put together a series of sessions so that we could address those rules and write documentation for them. So that's teamwork, that's writing, and leadership. And then maybe finally, hack days. So we always advertised that we did hack days, but we never did. So I decided, let's do some hack days. And the last one, so my company was originally in Birmingham, so lots of them are in Birmingham. And the first hack day we had to have it in Birmingham, but I managed to drag everyone down here, which was great. And we had beautiful sun, it was perfect. But that's demonstrating leadership, teamwork, creativity, and time management. So you see up to this point, all of the skills that I have used are ones that I think I'm quite good at, but time management, not great at. So I had people helping me with that. People that are really good at time management within my company to ensure that I got it right, because I had 20-odd people coming down to Brighton. I had to make sure this was working properly. So I had people to help me. So I embraced other people's superpowers. And then finally, within the PHP world, we're doing object-oriented programming, and I had no clue what that was 15 months ago. So I'm putting together a little course to run with the company to hopefully to make sure that everybody else is up to speed. And yes, that's using adaptability because it's something new, teamwork and content creation, not social media content creation, but I'm going to be creating lesson materials and things like that because it's going to be kind of like an online teaching sort of thing. So you're a team leader, right? What are you going to do to maximize your team's productivity? First off, you could just ask your team what their superpowers are and then utilize them. Jo, she's great at time management. And I've got this big piece of work coming up that I really need to, I've got strict deadlines. I'm not so good at time management. I've already told you that. So I'm going to get Jo to help me to plan this. I'm using her skills and we're going to get a great project plan out because I've got her to help me. You could then also ask your team what your weakest superpowers are. I told you Gary was great at communication. Jo's not so good at communication. So I'm going to put them together and they're going to do a really little talk. So nothing big, just a little talk where Gary is going to help Jo to deliver something. So you can embrace your team's strengths, combine them with the weaknesses and help everybody to improve. And what you could also do, and this came from one of my colleagues, was that you could just ask your team what other people's superpowers are within the team. And it'd be really interesting. I think I know what my superpowers are, but what do other people think? And it would be nice to see what your team think, that superpowers that you've got, but also other members within your team. So I think diversity within a team is powerful. Not diversity as in the street dancing group. I don't think they're very good coders. But diversity, because it brings unique strengths to your team. Learning JavaScript or PHP or any language can be a lot easier than learning time or stress management. If you can get somebody in your team that can code, might not be perfect, but can be trainable, but has a background where they've dealt with stress or time management or project management or something like that, that can be super powerful. So I would say, yeah, always look for those transferable skills and as something to sort of grab onto. Right, and I said I'd turn back to this towards the end, which is this traditional path versus these alternative pathways. So I utilize my range, my mix of transferable skills to get to where I am now. But I'm not the only person. For data protection reasons, I've changed their names. But Jane did work in my team. I've already talked about my path. So Jane worked in a warehouse packing. So, well, what transferable skills there? Again, it's not necessarily deemed as a professional job. It doesn't have a degree behind it, but there's teamwork there. There's multitasking. You're not just dealing with packing one thing in one box. You've got lots of stuff going on. There's stress management because you've got deadlines. There's time management because you've got deadlines. There's a lot of skills there in something you wouldn't necessarily expect. Then they did this School of Code boot camp where they enforced the teamwork and time management skills, added some project management and some adaptability because they were learning new things on a very fast basis. Jane's doing really well. No coding background, but with all of those transferable skills, is flourishing in her job. We've got Gary. It's a different Gary to the one I had before. This is the person that I said that's currently on the boot camp. He was a forensic police officer beforehand. He then became a tutor, and he now wants to get into tech. He's got, as a forensic police officer, a lot of stress management there, a lot of data analysis. As the tutor, you've got multitasking, time management, mentoring, coaching. So a lot of skills that are going to help bring him. He's just got to learn the code. And if he can learn the code, he's got a load of powers that he can bring to a team. So my message is this: find your range. Go and discover your superpowers, embrace them, use them in your role to gain promotion or to just make yourself a better part of the team, and also empower your team with them. Any questions?
Thanks, Darren. It's a very, very, very good talk. I really like it because it's very much about the skills that can't be automated, and I think they're going to be more and more important.
ChatGPT is not going to tell you how to teamwork.
Are there any questions? Yes.
Very good talk, actually. Thanks for that. Really enjoyed it. Would you say you see yourself as going more into coding or more management? Because it seems like you're going in a sort of crossways right now.
I don't know. This is a conversation I'm having with myself and someone who's coaching me. Is like, where do I see myself going?
Right, because at that point I wanted to point out, probably, but everyone noticed, I think you were overqualified for a teacher job. That's why you found it easy to do it in 4 years, what others would do in 8 to 10. That's my observation, because my wife is in similar position. She has masters in mathematics and she's teaching, so she's just literally just killing it. And once you have a science degree, I noticed people are really good at picking up all the other subjects in technology. So no surprise you're thriving in that. Well done.
Any other questions? And by the way, if you're watching this online, you can also ask questions using the chat box. You've got one. Do you want to say it?
Yeah, I've got that. Cool. It's the other speaker, Chris. If you were working on a career change and you weren't sure how to describe your transferable skill, how would you get help to phrase that? Or how have you had help to phrase that? Like maybe if there's any tools that you'd use.
There's no tools that I've
Yeah,
used.
you just think about it.
I rely a lot on my wife to check most of the things that I do, and so she's always been good at checking stuff for me. But the thing that's necessarily out there that's helped me. I suppose it's a lot easier now because with AI, you can say these are the jobs that I've done. What sort of transferable skills have come out of that?
Yeah, so maybe like AI or just reflecting among your peers. It's easier to maybe have someone else describe you than you, because you get that external view.
I think transferable skills aren't talked about. So you probably don't necessarily know what that looks like. So yeah, just talk about it.
Yeah, nice.
On that, actually, so you mentioned ChatGPT at some point, and obviously you mentioned ChatGPT at some point, and obviously we are everybody talks about that at the moment. But to try maybe and see it in a positive way, how do you use generative AI to help with everything you talked about tonight? One example, for instance, like the explaining complex concepts, for instance. Do you use it yourself, like on a daily basis, or for this kind of context of transferable skills?
Yes, for some. I think some it can help you with. So, for example, it helped me write this presentation. It can't deliver it for me, but it can help. It helps you to describe what those transferable skills look like, so you can see if you have them or not. Can they help you with them? Potentially, but I've not used them to help me with them. Actually, no, that's not true. So for time management, the one that I'm not good at, I think for me, because I'm good at the transferable skills I'm good at, I don't necessarily need the help with. But the ones that I'm not good at, so time management, when I was doing the hack day, I was thinking of timings, and I was working with ChatGPT and the person I was talking about in my company to come up with a schedule so that we could cover what we needed to do in the 2 days. So there is a space where you can get that help.
That's interesting. Are there any other questions? Yeah, over there.
Now, I know you come from a very structured learning environment from the start. I mean, how do you deal with unstructured?
Define unstructured learning.
Legacy, large. I mean, it's a bit like the code set you've got at the moment. Is it badly formed? Is it suboptimal?
Where I am at the moment, I've only been doing it a week, so it's hard to tell. But when I moved projects last time, yeah, we picked up a code base that was in a bad way. That was fun.
So do you rewrite the whole lot, or do you patch it?
We rewrote the bits that we were touching where possible. Some of it we couldn't, so it was just patching, but we were under very strict time schedules. So yeah, we wanted to rewrite and to fix, but yeah, just timings meant that we couldn't.
Yeah, it's dealing with suboptimal is what I'm interested in. When you've got something which is not clear, not defined, not straightforward. Yeah. So the superpowers you've got, they may distract. Yes,
I also, distraction, is something that happens on a daily basis for me. So it's something to,
And where I am, I've got an awful lot of management politics. So it's irrational distractions.
To add on management stuff, you just have to set your everyone's expectations when you join a new team or you join a new job, etc. Once you set the boundaries, that makes life hell of an easier, because everyone knows how you work, when you work, and when to approach you and when to leave you alone. Basically, you have to set those boundaries, because otherwise I've been like, before I set boundaries, I was like working 24/7 pretty much. But at that point, you just burn yourself out.
Well,
That's it.
that's the joy of teaching is
Yes.
that I've already experienced what working stupid hours is, and that's one of the reasons I left. And I refused to work more than my hours because I saw how detrimental it was. And everybody knows that I work my hours and that's it. And I just switch off because, yeah, teaching, you cannot switch off. You can't. I work till 2 in the morning most days. Yeah.
You have to set boundaries.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah, and thankfully, this is a job where you can set those boundaries more easier than other positions.
I feel like this is going to be a nice segue to the next talk. But
Yep.
before I let you go, I think we all need to hear a cheese joke.
Okay. What cheese would you use to hide a small horse? Mascarpone. I'll give you another one. How do you approach an angry Welsh cheese? Carefully. I've got loads.
All right, let's give another round of applause.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to take a short 5 to 10 minutes break. So yeah, if you're watching this online, we're going to be back soon for the second talk of the night. So yeah, see you soon.
Hopefully we're audible and everything's working okay. Check 1, check 2.
Welcome back. So it is time for our second talk of the night. Many of you will already know Chris. I think it's the fourth time to PHP Sussex, so very much a regular. Chris is a lead product engineer at Browserless, and tonight he is going to tell us about his experience going through Burnout. Please join me to welcome Christopher Miller for his talk, Fear the Walking Dead, Burnout Zombie to Recovery.
Yes, so as Yannick said, I've been here many times. I think it's actually 5 times now, Yannick. So, Yannick's stolen the next slide. Who am I? Everything Yannick just said, but also all of that lot. So I've done PHP, Laravel, TypeScript, C, C++, Golang, assembly. If there's a language, I've probably written in it. But beyond that, I'm also been doing this for 25 years. I'm a dad, I'm a speaker, I'm a granddad, a husband, a friend. All of these things play into the whole story of what burnout looks like and how it affects people. And balance between all of these things is crucial. I wouldn't be a good developer without being a good family member, and I wouldn't be a good family member without being a developer. So where do I work? Browserless. We're a company that provides headless browser infrastructure. We solve those complex browser automation challenges. It's a modern technology stack, but we emphasize everything that matters, which is just making it easy for people. Obligatory blurb from the CEO. That's what we do. So, have you ever felt like this? That zombie feeling of just going through the motions, no joy or engagement in the work, feeling disconnected from that purpose, your why for being a developer. This is a common symptom of burnout, just that emotional exhaustion. Or just maybe you felt a bit like this one, that feeling of being overwhelmed, unable to cope, where every task just feels completely insurmountable. That panic that comes when you suddenly realize that you're actually not okay. Loads of developers feel things like this, but many of them suffer in silence. And this isn't the only look of what burnout looks like. So if you've experienced anything like this, or even anything close to it, then this is for you. But it's also for those that might want to help colleagues. There is hope and there is practical steps forward. And recovery is possible with the right sort of approach. So let's understand a bit about burnout. What exactly is it? So burnout, it's a chronic workplace stress that hasn't been successfully managed. It's also something that is specifically recognized by the World Health Organization. It's specifically work-related. It's not just talking about general life stress. It often develops gradually over time and not a single event. It can affect absolutely every part of you. It's that emotional exhaustion, cynicism, detachment. It's feeling like you're ineffective, but it also has physical and mental health consequences. So what does it look like? Well, the first phase of burnout is actually feeling like the exact opposite. You feel like you're Superman, that nothing could hurt you. And that overconfidence often precedes a burnout, and it's a warning sign that I missed big time. I felt like I was totally invincible. I couldn't make mistakes. I was always right. That sets unrealistic expectations, not just on you, but also on the rest of your team. And it creates conditions for an inevitable crash. It was a ticking time bomb. There was a big boom that was coming. So what were the warning signs when I look back? For me, it was chronic fatigue, and it was unrelieved by rest. It was that increased cynicism, overcommitting to prove my worth, difficulty in concentrating, those physical symptoms, that headaches, that insomnia, they developed gradually over a few months. Each individually seemed manageable, but together they formed this whole pattern of just not being able to function properly. Knowing these now, it would have helped me to catch it a bit earlier. The crash, it's the moment that everything fell apart. It felt a bit like this. It honestly felt like I was dying. The metaphor of hitting a wall is pretty much literal. One day you just stop dead. And the moment I hit that wall, well, there was a specific point in time where I knew that that was what was happening. It felt like hitting that physical barrier. And that is one of the most common symptoms of burnout, that sudden collapse. It's like the body and mind have just reached a limit. But the thing is, it went a bit like this for the company I was working with. The damage that I caused was unbelievable to people that were in that company. So what were those physical and mental symptoms I was talking about? It was headaches, stomach pain, muscle pain, overwhelming fatigue, feeling like I got the flu permanently, anxiety, depression, lack of confidence, irritability and anger. The problem I had is all of these were also symptoms of another condition I have called fibromyalgia. So I was sort of just saying, it's just a fibro flare, I'll be fine. But the impact was beyond me. The company I was working at was seriously hurt by the burnout. There was mistakes from me. I was blaming others, feeling like I was being persecuted for everything. But that perception of persecution was more than just, a little conversation with somebody here and there. It felt like everything was my fault. So here's a real example. The permissions-based authentication control system. This one specifically illustrates the exact moment that I knew that wall had hit. What's about to happen is going to be hard to watch. There was embarrassment, there was shame, but it was important to be honest about the difficulties that was going on there. So implementing that basic PBAC should be easy, right? It was just upgrade to permissions-based, roll out the code. The overconfidence was an absolute warning sign. 2 days. I promised a quick turnaround. I reinforced my identity as that go-to problem solver. I set unrealistic expectations of myself, and the overcommitment, that's another classic sign of burnout. I said, I've done this before. Doesn't account for my current state. Past success doesn't guarantee a future performance, especially when you're approaching burnout. Okay, so it was a slight exaggeration. I actually said 2 weeks, but 2 days was the largest gift I could find. But even then, 2 weeks was setting myself up to fail. And it's important to be honest about our limitations. And humour, as we've seen so far, helps discuss these difficult topics. I don't do cheese jokes, but I do very cheesy jokes. So a few days into this project, initially it was okay. Things were working. But the problems started mounting quickly. I mean, the way I started was to delete the authentication system that we currently had because it was broken. It wasn't actually broken, but it just wasn't the way I wanted to write it. So I deleted it. But the complexity started to reveal itself of what was really going on. Things that I thought were in place weren't. And that capacity of mine to do things was diminishing rapidly. And that wall, that moment came. The first day I woke up and I started looking like this. That complete incapacity. I can't do this today. That cognitive function. Basically, even making a coffee was hard work. Simple tasks became insurmountable. The gap between the expectations and my ability was crushing. I started throwing tantrums at work. That emotional breakdown followed complete shutdown. It was the shame of not meeting the expectations, the loss of that professional identity as I'm the one that can do it, and the fear of the career implications kicked in big time. Then came the medical reality check. Because of those physical symptoms, I spoke to a doctor. I began to wonder, am I dying? I genuinely feared that. I asked the doctor and he said no. Now, we could pretend that there's no bad news, but that wasn't the case. The burnout had real physical consequences. The body can literally only handle so much stress, and this realization was frightening but necessary. I was working 15, 16, 17-hour days. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't even eating properly, and I was abusing caffeine more than I normally do. Anybody that knows me that knows that caffeine is how I function. Most of my bloodstream is caffeine, but this was to excess. But I took a month out and I focused on recovery. I had to step away completely for a month. It was essential for that physical and mental health. So let's discuss how I found my way back into code and how PHP actually played a part in that. So let's look at that recovery journey. That first step, I had to step away. I had to focus on recovery. I actually got signed off by the doctor for this. Complete disconnection was necessary. I had to take the time to give me space to reflect and to heal, to start looking back at all of those warning signs and to start picking up on what was going on there. But then there's recovery principles that came with that. I had to acknowledge the problem without being ashamed of it. Often people want to hide these little things, and it's a major obstacle. But imagine trying to hide something as big as burnout. And it's a major obstacle to any recovery. Physical health underpins it, so I had to prioritize basic physical needs. There's this weird thing that's called sleep that I had to start doing. I had to start considering what I was eating, and even eating in the first place. I had to seek professional help and start talking to people that knew what they were dealing with. And I had to start with those small, achievable tasks to get back to it. So those small wins began to build momentum of returning back to it. But gradually, rebuilding that confidence over time, it takes time, it takes patience. But the role of familiar tools was important. I had to return to using technologies that I knew. So what does that mean? Whilst I was going through this period where I was getting burnt out more and more, I was actually putting aside all of the tools that were put in place to help me because they were getting in my way. I don't want to be arguing with PHP Stan, and I don't want to be worrying about whether the tests are red, green, orange, or any other color. I don't want to be worrying about whether the code looks pretty or not. Now, anybody that knows me knows that clean code is one of the things that I talk about regularly. But during this burnout, I didn't care. Reducing that cognitive load was critical to this recovery process. I had to start putting these things back in place and realize that I'd actually thrown everything away in favor of being the superhero, in favor of being the one that could solve everything. Familiar patterns often require less mental energy. So for me, a familiar pattern was running the tests, seeing them green. If I saw a red one, going and fixing it. Running PHP Stan and seeing 500 errors once I'd written 3 lines of code. But creating that safe environment around it was essential. So what ended up happening is I actually left the company that I was at where this burnout had happened and moved to a new company. In this new company, there was more time available to just breathe, to just cope with what was going on. They were aware of what had happened before, and they took me on in the knowledge that I'd not long been through burnout and that I may not be at my best. But they gave me space to do this. They gave me the ability to use tools that I was familiar with to make my job easier. So it was using the IDE I wanted to use. They happened to use Visual Studio Code. I happened to use PHP Storm. Simple little things like that, making me feel more comfortable with the role. And it allowed me to focus at that point on the healing process and not new learning curves. Now, of course, there was elements in there where new things were there. I had to deal with new code bases. I had to deal with new structures in how they chose to do code. I had to deal with new people. There was no way around that. But it also gave me the opportunity to be mostly remote, to be working with a team of people who were exceedingly skilled at what they do, and who were able to give me the safety net that I needed that previously I'd been giving others. So those small wins are building confidence over time. So I left this company where I tried to implement the payback system. And it came through an accumulation of small wins. The first task I had to do at this new company was simply to change some text on a button. And even something like that was a fight. It was like, where do I find the button? Where's the component? It's like I'd forgotten everything I knew. But building up over time allowed me to build this confidence of actually everything's okay and I can still do this. PHP and its related tools specifically helped. And momentum was crucial. So how did PHP specifically help? The specific features in PHP really matched what I personally needed. Simplicity, ease of use. And it's not just about finding tools that support recovery that I happen to tell you. It's finding your own toolkit of what that looks like. So language features, they really did reduce that mental load. So PHP has got strong typing. How easy is it to understand what's going on when you know exactly what's going in and what's coming out of a function? They caught the mistakes before they became bugs. And those little tiny steps of looking at the code, being able to read it, being able to follow through the type all the way through, it made it easier for me to just be safe in understanding the code. Return types, they reduce mental load. I mean, it's great to know that this is going to be a float that comes back. I don't need to worry about whether it's a string, float, integer, or any other random thing, because it tells me. The compiler became like a second brain, and that's when mine was exhausted. And less mental load, less to keep track of, easier to work. Over time, those two things started to help to build up the confidence. Now, I use a really bad example for this one. I have no idea in what circumstance I'd want a Boolean or an array, but union types. Just being able to say that this can be two things was useful. Now, the aim was always to get it down to one, but being able to put those in step by step and then refine the code afterwards made it easier for me. And it's obviously better to be explicit than implicit when you're cognitively impaired, or just in general. I mean, I would much rather be able to know exactly what is going on in the code. And for me, reading a function like that at the time, if it hadn't got the two types of string and integer here and bool and array here, I would be guessing what was going on in this function and I'd be trying to work it out. And my brain just was not working when I first went back to this. But on top of that, there's all of these modern PHP features that really helped. So PHP 8.4 gave us loads of things. Some of these are predating 8.4, but named arguments. I don't need to remember what order things are in because I can just specify the names. Now, yes, afterwards I'd sort them into the right order, but I could just fire them in and then sort them out. Attributes made it easy to organize what was going on and mentally understand the pictures that I was creating. Match expressions, really simplifying that complex logic. And obviously things like less boilerplate with constructor property promotions. The less I had to think about, the easier that it became to do. So just that match expression as an example. Clean, readable code. My brain couldn't handle the complexity of if pending, then this. If approved, then this. But it could understand that you could have one thing on the left and one thing on the right. And it became that easy cognitive load. And the exhaustiveness of checking. And catching missed cases just by throwing in a default. So I could run through and I could catch those very, very easily. All of these little things built up to a code base that I could understand. Now, at the time, I was helping the team also understand some of these new things myself. And that, again, was building that confidence and building that belief that actually everything was okay. And being able to even get back to the point that I can be here and talk about this. When this happened, it was honestly the worst time I'd ever been through. But then it's those tools that provide the safety net. So beyond the language, we have this whole ecosystem of things that go on. And PHP's ecosystem, I don't know another language like it. Those modern tools caught mistakes and guided me, automated and reduced the tedious parts of development. And that relief of all of the hard things was critical to rebuilding what I was doing before. So PHP Stan, I loved seeing that thing of no errors at the bottom. It wasn't very often I saw no errors at the bottom. It was usually after I'd fixed the errors that I'd put in the first place. But it was finding those errors. It reduced the anxiety. Well, what if my code goes to production? What if it's got this problem? Because that's where I'd been before, that I would write in such a way that tests and PHP Stan would block anything getting to production. But I dropped that tool. I gradually increased strictness as I started to recover. So I started off with a fairly low setting of like 2 or 3, I think it was, and increased over time. Pest testing. It just made it so easy to do the testing. It reads like English. It, or test, calculates the correct total. Expect this thing to be this thing, and stick it in a group. That sort of expressive testing, it rebuilt the confidence in those tests I was writing. And somehow, Pest just makes it easier to test things. It's almost like writing in an expressive way was the only way I could get back to testing. And testing is another thing. I've actually given a talk here before on testing. And the talk I gave was how to test the untestable. At this point, I could barely test 2 and 2 is 4. PHP CS. I let the tools handle whether I needed a new line here or whether I needed an indent here. And yes, I also threw Pest in there as well because it was mainly Laravel. But those automated formatting remove pointless decisions of, do I need to press tab or not? Do I need to worry about a semicolon here or not? It picked it up with Stan and then with CS Fixer. And standardizing the code meant it was one less thing to worry about. It also reduced friction with the team members over stylistic choices. We set up a set of rules that just made it so easy to automate this stuff. But then we had the mature ecosystem around testing. So we had things like Mockery for painless testing. You could just mock the things that you needed. And that again built this safety net. The expressive API made the intentions clear of what we were testing. And it also provided safety nets around fragile code. And yes, some of that fragile code was mine that we then went on to fix. But building in this process of turning to a tool and allowing the tool to do what was necessary just rebuilt that confidence. And little by little, I did less mocking and more actual testing. Composer dependency management. I just let Composer worry about it because it just works. I don't need to worry about package management in ways that I once did. And I'd let Composer handle upgrades, and then I'd run through the tests that we'd written. And dependency resolutions. My brain couldn't handle whether Laravel 11 was compatible with Pest 2. I let Composer tell me. And then I just made Composer to do what was needed. But then there was that documentation ecosystem. So one thing that we are phenomenally well sourced with in PHP, those official docs with user comments. Now, yes, some of them are like 20 years old, and some of them are even 30 years old. But on top of that, Laravel's exceptional documentation, the ability to dive into Laravel's docs and just go to directly where I needed. I mean, I didn't feel like reading Laracasts. I could go to Laracasts, I could watch a video, and I could probably find one on exactly what I wanted. And multiple formats helped with that recovery process of being able to dive into YouTube videos or to Laracasts or to docs or to blogs. And that's where the PHP community came in. There are PHP heroes who literally have no idea that they helped. Maybe they will after this talk. People like Jeffrey Way with the clear explanations when my brain was foggy. I couldn't work it out. A freak with practical code solutions on his blog. Taylor Otwell for building something that just works. Nuno for making testing feel like a joy again. And Marcel for getting all of the boring parts automated. I mean, for me, Laravel, Herd and related tools around that and other things that Marcel has built just automate all of the stuff that I don't need to care about. So what sort of content kept me going as well? Well, digestible content was key. So I couldn't process long articles to start with. So it was people like Laravel News, those bite-sized little updates. Povilas's approach of step-by-step. So I could stop a video after step 1 and then stop it after step 2. I could break it up easily. Then there's things like PHP Annotated Monthly, just summarise what I needed to know. The No Compromises podcast, it was kind of less isolating. And people like Christoph Rumpel's streams, those casual learnings of what was coming in Laravel next, when those formal docs were too much. And a guy that I know is lurking in the comments somewhere is Steve. So just Steve King was honestly the biggest lifeline. He's also known as Steve McDougall. His content was exactly the right thing at the right time. His approach to software design aligned with what I needed. So how did Steve help? Architectural patterns, order amid the chaos that is my head. Steve's just said hi in the comments. He explained complex principles in accessible, easy ways. Like, he literally explains solid principles in simple terms. Package development expertise. If there's a package about it, Steve probably wrote it. Concise, valuable blog content. The blogs that Steve writes and the articles that Steve writes were exactly what was needed at the time. Real solutions when he's posting stuff on Twitter, GitHub, YouTube, anywhere. That unique approach, it just resonated with where I needed to be. Practical architecture focus. I could worry less about how to architect things because I could follow an example. Clean API design principles. I mean, come on, Steve is literally the API guy. And I followed those principles and it made my job of writing APIs easier. Data transformers, and then modular packaged code. Just doing these things as the normal. And yes, me and Steve disagree over whether a class should be final or not. But hey, open source learning is there for a reason, and his resources made it really easy. So what sort of practical lessons can we pick up on? Beyond PHP, there's also other things that we can do. So start with the simple. Start with those basic type functions. When you're getting to that point that you're burnt out, go back to basics. Make sure you've got typing. Make sure you've got PHP stand, but start low and work your way up. Build the test coverage as your confidence regrows. But the PHP ecosystem scaled with me. And that flexibility, that gradual approach made it so easy to get back to where I needed to be. So what did I learn? Strong types reduce cognitive load. Now, I know I've said that a lot, but it's absolutely true. Without the typing system, I would probably still be completely lost. Letting the tools catch your mistakes makes it easier. Modern PHP is actually therapeutic for burnt-out devs. It's easy to write, it's easy to understand, and hey, if you don't know what to do, find somebody that does. There's a whole ecosystem and a whole community out there. Gradual typing lets you add that safety incrementally. But beyond PHP, there's universal recovery principles of use technologies with guardrails. It doesn't matter whether it's PHP, JavaScript, C#, Go, maybe not assembly language because there's not many guardrails there. Embrace automation for the routine stuff. Why do I need to worry about whether the tests have been run before I put it in a pipe, put it into a PR? Let CI/CD do it for me. Breaking work into smaller pieces. By breaking it down, it made it easier for me to step through. Find communities that support your learning style and just work with that. But celebrate the small wins constantly. If you write that tiny function that works, celebrate it. So I did eventually get back into the game and get to the point where I'm back now at a company where I'm taking the lead again. The journey back wasn't quick, and it certainly wasn't a straight line. It was small steps, it was incremental progress, and yes, there was days where I took a step back. But now I want to be able to help others to recover as well. So how can you help others? We all have colleagues who might be struggling. And there's practical ways you can support them by recognizing the signs. So what are the early warning signs? Decreased productivity, or even the quality of work. Withdrawing from team interactions, hiding away in the corner and not wanting to talk. Unless that's their normal, it's probably an early warning sign. Increased cynicism or irritability. For me, that was literally everybody else is wrong and I'm right. Now, I could sort of default to that sometimes, quite a lot, but this was excessive. An excessive self-criticism. Now, there is a difference between self-deprecating humor and genuine self-criticism, and it's knowing the difference. And people around me began to spot the difference between genuinely criticizing myself and just self-deprecating humor. And it's difficulty focusing on tasks. There are other signs, and honestly, it's just looking for something that's different with your employee. And this applies to any mental health problem as well. Talk to them, but listen without judging. Avoid the urge to immediately fix the problem. Sometimes just being heard validates the experience. Create that safe space where being vulnerable is safe to do. So what kind of communication helps with this? Ask open questions, not leading ones. Honestly, if somebody said to me, "Are you stressed?" my answer would be no, because I was too stressed to talk about being stressed. But if somebody said, "How are you feeling about your work?" maybe I might tell them. Avoid suggesting solutions immediately. Sometimes people just want to be heard and just want to be listened to. So avoid telling somebody what the solution is to their situation until they're ready to hear it. Acknowledge their experience. Tell them that it's okay, I understand. And again, create that safe space for vulnerability. Be somebody that they can come to and go, "I can't do this today." What does practical support look like? I mean, we can all see how we can support somebody from the emotional side of things, but offer to pair program on those challenging tasks. But also don't judge what that person's calling challenging. I've been in the situation where people have asked me for help on something that I've thought was simple. But just because I think it's simple doesn't mean that they do. And when somebody's in burnout, being told, "Oh, that's easy," is just going to make it worse. Share tools that kind of reduce your cognitive load. And that can be anything. It doesn't necessarily need to be a package or something like that. It could just be, to reduce cognitive load, I go and take a 5-minute walk. Help to break down complex projects and complex problems. That payback system that I was working on, I'd envisage this as being super quick, super easy, until it wasn't. And then it was like, this is too big, I don't know how to start. Review code without criticism. Now, that's not a case of saying to somebody that their code is fine when it isn't. But it's not criticizing, it's positive action. If we do this, it'll be better. So it's not laying blame at somebody. It's not telling somebody that what they've done is wrong. It's saying, if we as a team can do this, you're going to get a better result. Suggest resources, but don't mandate them. Don't make it an absolute requirement that that person goes and watches that video, because it doesn't work. But overall, respect boundaries. Create breathing room. Shield them from unnecessary meetings. I mean, how many times do we joke about this meeting could have been an email? And 9 times out of 10, it could have been. Help negotiate realistic deadlines. If managers are saying this is going to take a week and you think that the manager is wrong, when somebody's in a struggling point, step in and help them negotiate. Don't message after hours or before hours. At one point in this time period, I was getting messages at 3 a.m, and this wasn't an international time zone thing. This was just people that were working at 3 a.m. Avoid those just a quick thing requests, because 1, they're never quick. 2, they're interrupting the person who's already struggling. And 3, they're just plain annoying. And celebrate small wins genuinely. Sometimes just hearing, well done on that, can really bolster somebody's confidence that day. Be their advocate for them. Speak up when that workload's excessive. But also normalize taking a break. I was working and I was not eating. I was not sleeping. I was doing nothing like that. I was working 16 hours, 17 hours non-stop. Share your own struggles, but appropriately. You know, not, oh, I get what you mean. When I had this, it was 10 times worse. Because that's minimizing it. Whereas going, do you know what? I felt the same. Isn't minimizing it. That's encouraging somebody to be open. Redirect praise their way. If as a team there's been a success, maybe just direct some of that success at the person. Just bolster that confidence a little. And honestly, if you are in any position to do so, build a culture of psychological safety. Honestly, the best place I ever worked was a place where I could go to the CEO and say, do you know what? Today I feel shit. And being able to say that in a place where he understood and he spoke back to me in a way that was understanding, that was caring, made a massive difference. Recovery is possible. PHP saved my career and possibly my health too. So let's take action today. Evaluate your own work patterns and stress. How does your stress look like in work? Look for colleagues who might be struggling. Consider how your tech choices might be affecting your mental health. Sometimes the tools that you're using are actually making it worse. Share resources, share support systems. And always remember, burnout is preventable and it is recoverable. And at that point, I finished 3 minutes early, so we've got 3 minutes longer for questions.
Thanks, Chris. Great talk. I wasn't actually expecting PHP to be such a big part of your talk. I really love it. Are there any questions? Yes.
There you go. I'll have to like look over there and look over there at the same time. I must admit, it's actually not really a question, but basically, I just wanted to say thank you for that talk. I personally found it really super helpful for people that know that have been in similar situations. It's a topic that I think, along with like mental health generally, like doesn't get spoken about enough, and it's great to have a talk like that, in particularly in the tech context. And I was kind of like, there's so much good stuff in there, and I was trying to think of like one kind of like key takeaway for me, and ironically it came, I think, just at the end there about and you kind of said like if you're in any way able to like fostering that environment of psychological safety, and I think that is such an important thing for places of work. But I think it's one of those things that everyone can do. It's not like people talk a lot about culture in companies and things, and like to a certain extent, you know, it might be there when you get there, but it's a thing that evolves over time. And like, if you don't have that in your place of work, or you want to have that, like, be that change, like, you know, foster it, whether it's just in your little team, like amongst people. And that's how culture changes, and that's how you get to that culture of psychological safety, because I think that's such an important thing. To be able, as you said, like to be able to go to the CEO, like your boss's boss, random people, and go, today I'm feeling like shit. And they go, I hear you, like, you know, how can I help you? Not unlucky, like, you know, get back to work. You know, anyway, yeah, I'm talking again, sorry. But thank you.
Welcome.
To maybe pick up on that actually, and about that last slide as well. So say, you know, somebody's watching this and kind of like recognizes the symptoms in themselves, and there is no such support system in their company. What do you do? Like, can you just basically go to your GP and the GP is...
Yes. So the first port of call, if it is affecting you to the point that it is making your work complicated, that is exactly what a GP is for. If the GP won't help you, ask for a second opinion. GPs are trained to help with this kind of thing, but don't forget they're also very stressed, because GPs have 7 minutes to do the small talk, get the diagnosis, give you the resolution, and then get you out of the door ready for the next one. And GPs are trained for this. There are also all over the country self-referral mechanisms for mental health. If this is taking more of a mental health side than a physical side with the burnout, find out where your local self-referral is. The NHS introduced that about 3 years ago, the ability to self-refer for that. I hate the terminology they chose, low-level mental health problems, but that's the terminology they use. What they actually mean is things that are like depression, anxiety, that are common and easy to treat with low-level interventions like talking therapies. But honestly, the key thing is just talk to somebody. Don't sit alone and not talk. I have actually had friends previously, not in the tech industry, who are no longer with us because they didn't talk.
No. Thank you for the sensible advice. There's another question there.
Thank you for that talk. It was really good. And I, in teaching, went down a similar sort of line, and yeah, lots of experience from that. Has you obviously been through this? Have you found it easier to spot signs in other people?
Yeah, it becomes easier once you've been there, mainly because you see all of the things that you didn't see before you got there. Because one of the things I did, and this isn't the same for everybody, but for me, I looked back and I could see the warning signs for nearly 12 months before that one big day hit. And I could see a trail where I was creating problems in companies. And that isn't the case anymore. It's a different situation altogether now, where the new company that I have only recently started with, there is a culture of let's talk about it. And that exists before I even got here.
Are there any other questions? Maybe online? No, nothing. Any other questions in the room? Last chance. No. All right, let's get another round of applause for Chris. Thanks again for your talk, mates. Have a good one. See you soon.
Thank you.
All right, well, that's it for us. We are going to wrap this up now. Yeah, I don't have much else to tell you. So thank you all for coming. And I think, no, there is no drink, no pizza left. So you can all go. Thank you. Bye. I see you next time. Take care.